This is apropos. 4 British women who've accused notorious influencer Andrew Tate of rape and coercive control have expressed concern about reports that the Trump administration has been petitioning Romania to ease his travel restrictions. The former kickboxer is under house arrest there on suspicion of rape and trafficking, which he denies. Bucharest claims that it has not come under any pressure to lift restrictions on his movements. James Vazina has the latest.
It's with fear that Romanian authorities may be pressured by the United States that 4 women involved in separate cases have raised their concerns. After hanging up his gloves, former professional kickboxer and self-professed misogynist Andrew Tate turned to online platforms to encourage men to subscribe to an ultra-patriarchal framework with the belief that this will lead to a successful life. Together with his brother, he moved to Romania, growing their online presence and fortune, while critics have repeatedly warned of the influence that their content is having on young men.
I've been nice, I've been patient.
The British-American pair are currently being charged by Romanian prosecutors for human trafficking, sexual misconduct, money laundering and with starting an organised crime group. The brothers say that they're innocent and have recently been released from house arrest, but are forbidden from leaving the country. And this is where the Financial Times report comes in. The paper claims that US officials have reached out to the Romanian government with a request made to return the brothers' passports. The spokesperson for Romania's foreign minister has replied that the country's courts are independent and operate based on the law. The women who've expressed their concern about reported meddlings are accusing Andrew Tate of rape, having brought a case to the High Court in the UK. Romania has granted a British request to extradite them once their cases in the country have concluded.
For more on this story, let's cross live now to Australia, where Dr Stephanie Wescott is standing by for us. She's a lecturer at Monash University, Faculty of Education. Stephanie, thanks so much for waking up so early to be with us this evening in Paris. Firstly, a British survey suggested just last month that Andrew Tate, we saw him in the report there, he's viewed positively by almost half of all young men. For people who may not be too familiar with this particular influencer, how to explain his appeal?
I mean, it's pretty difficult to explain, honestly, for anyone who's viewed his content. It's highly offensive towards women. He's a dangerous individual, as these alleged charges against him suggest. But his appeal may be found in the way that he is able to speak to existing grievances, among young men in particular. Some of those grievances are very real around, taking charge of your economic future, economic security, but some of them play on really dangerous ideas about gender and about feminism, such as the idea that men need to take their power back, that women belong in the home, that men need to be in control in romantic relationships. So there's definitely something latently appealing about these ideas, but we need to be really careful about how we talk about Andrew Tate and whether or not we're willing to accept him as an emerging political figure.
And do you think that these young men, they're influenced by his rhetoric, or are they actually being driven towards him and towards other influencers of his ilk because they are already feeling alienated?
They're actually being driven towards his content by algorithms in the first place. So there's a few studies now that confirm that a social media account on TikTok or even a YouTube account that belongs to a male person will be shown Andrew Tate content and other manosphere figures content, whether they choose to search for it or not. It will just appear on their phone. So they may just be innocently scrolling, looking for interesting content. All of a sudden they are exposed to these ideas about women, about men and masculinity, about feminism, about violence. And so there may be something initially appealing. There may be, initial concerns or grievances among these young men, but they are being deliberately exploited by the social media companies through their algorithms and, of course, through these content creators themselves.
And you say that Andrew Tate's success is a symptom of a much broader cultural shift. Can you explain that a little bit more for us?
Yeah, so we've seen some really concerning regressions in ideas and acceptance around gender equality. It's sort of a bit of a post-Me Too backlash, feminist backlash. The very fact that Donald Trump has been elected to US presidency is a demonstration that women's rights and safety are under attack. We have argued, myself and my colleague Steve Roberts, in our work, that the manosphere, which is this network of very powerful men, such as Joe Rogan, for example, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and other content creators online, are working together in a networked way to accrue political power and to support each other. And so we really need to be careful about that, especially with the spread of far right sentiment, the rise of fascism, and we're concerned about it in Australia too with our upcoming election.
And are they deliberately mirroring tactics that we're seeing being used by the likes of Donald Trump, also Elon Musk?
Absolutely. So we saw that once Donald Trump achieved electoral success in the most recent election, that Andrew Tate then began to talk about his own political aspirations and formed his own political party, which he called BRUV, which is actually an acronym, but is also a play on the British term of endearment. And he's capitalising on these sort of fascist and far right sentiments that have been quite successful in the American election and American political discourse. And he now has his own political aspirations. But it also makes sense that Donald Trump would want to be forgiving of Andrew Tate's alleged crimes, as Donald Trump himself has been accused of sexual misconduct and violence towards women. So what this is telling us is that women's concerns and women's safety are actually irrelevant to men's political aspirations.
And why do you think that young men particularly are feeling so politically alienated? And do you know at all how women are reacting to influencers like Andrew Tate?
It's a really interesting question why these men are appealing to young men in particular, especially when you can look at their content and easily dismiss it as extremist and offensive. As I mentioned before, there are some very real social and political and economic concerns among young people, but they are concerns that are affecting people of all genders. They're not just affecting young men. So some of it is actually the influence of deliberate disinformation about men's position in society, about unequal advantage that is afforded to women and people of other genders and sexualities. So it's very much a victim narrative and an aggrieved, entitled narrative that I think some people are finding very appealing. And of course, to young women and all women, actually, this is just blatantly dangerous and offensive. It's not possible to just say, well, some of Andrew Tate's ideas are actually good. I ignore the rest of it, because anyone who has a position that women are, inherently inferior to men, we should just be able to broadly dismiss them and not accept some of their claims as acceptable. So it's a very dangerous time for women to see these men and their views legitimised in politics.
And Stephanie, experts such as yourself say that the rise of this kind of misogynistic culture, it's fueling a normalisation of harmful attitudes towards women. How exactly do you even begin to start tackling that?
That is a great question, and it's something that we're grappling with in our work. We think it's really important to begin in education, because this is where we're seeing a lot of this dangerous rhetoric manifest. In our research, we found that young men in schools in Australia, and there's research elsewhere demonstrating that young men are starting to parrot some of these ideas and views. So we think it's actually important to treat this as disinformation and as a process of radicalisation that we're seeing occur, and to combat this through a process of education and an education campaign, just like you would any other radicalisation process.
And Stephanie, just finally, what are the specific dangers that beliefs like this are entering the mainstream, but it's also coming at a time where in a lot of countries around the world, public trust in democracy and in institutions is failing?
Yeah, so it's co-occurring in this post-truth period where we're seeing increased skepticism towards known facts and trusted experts and institutions. And Andrew Tate absolutely plays on that. He encourages young men to escape what he calls the matrix, which is basically just a mainstream kind of life, having a job, paying tax, voting. It's sort of this idea that you can live this alternate lifestyle that's outside of mainstream life and institutions and organisations. And we're also seeing that, of course, in America with some of the ideas that are being offered by people within that actual government institution. So it's very much riding the wave of post-truth and suggesting that we can make up our own facts and we can make up our own information for you to believe and take what's appealing to you and convenient and speaks to you emotionally rather than what is actually known and truthful.
Stephanie, we'll have to leave it there for now, but thank you so much for being with us on the programme this evening. That's Dr Stephanie Wescott, a lecturer at Monash University, Faculty of Education. Well, that is it from us.